All right, back to the Red Alert podcast. Cindy, you had a great question, and I want you to get to it.
Well, I've been, as you know, we watch the social media sites, and I'm starting to hear conversations or see conversations about the fan base and all of those, uh, like self-identified hockey gurus and experts and all this stuff, talking about the strategic advantage for the Detroit Red Wings to basically lose out the rest of the season so that they can be as bad as possible, so that they can be in the best position going into the draft. And I think that is crazy. I understand it from an academic point of view. I mean, I get it. I know how the system works, but I'll tell you, from someone who's had been blessed with a considerable amount of success in certain areas, um, that's not how it gets done.
Oh,
And I have some statistics
oh
to
boy.
prove it,
Oh
that
boy.
is not the way to go. I know we're coming to blows, Joe. This is going to be a SmackDown segment because I have a feeling that you and I are going to be on opposite sides of this question.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Where do you start, right?
Okay, first of all, let me say something real quick. I just want to get this
Okay,
out.
don't beat up on the senior citizen. Can I tell
Okay,
you that's not okay? Go ahead.
I won't beat up on you.
And I'm not a senior yet anyway.
No, here's the funny part. So I kind of align with the people that want to lose out, but here's where I don't align with them because it's a lottery. Like it's a lottery. Like you, just because you lose all the games doesn't mean that you are going to get the first pick. We know that. We are Detroit Red Wings fans. We have been boned by the lottery. Okay,
Right.
we have seen. Obviously, it's worked out in our favor. The 1 year we got Lucas Raymond. I mean, it would be nice to get Tim Stutzel. That would have been great. I think that's who Stevie Y was going to pick, and that was the pick before Lucas Raymond, and he's having a great year. But what it comes down to is you want to get in that top 10. That's all you want to get to. It doesn't matter about being locked in. This NHL lottery has no. It's hard even to like figure out even if you like know it. Like I got people like Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick. They have no idea how it works. So if they have no idea how it works, neither of us have any idea how it works because it's just the way it goes. So I don't want to lose out because I think that's stupid. I think if you just get in the top 10, you could be in the sweepstakes for Bedard, and maybe Bettman goes, okay, Stevie, I'm gonna help you out, and gets you Connor Bedard. Like, holy shit, that'd be amazing. But like, I'm not counting my chickens like that. I'm not gonna do that because the NHL hates us, so that's all it goes to.
So, what's your argument then for being in favor of losing out this season?
Well, I can see that it maybe will give you better odds to get Bedard. I mean, let's be honest. That's exactly who everybody wants. Connor Bedard is probably the best prospect since Connor McDavid. He is absolutely phenomenal. If you watch him with the now this name will really it's really a unique name, and it's a Canadian city, but the Regina Patriots, Pats.
Mm-hmm.
If you say it too fast, it might sound like something else. He plays.
Which screws most men over
Oh
anyway.
my
But
god!
go ahead.
But this kid's fine. He's phenomenal. Like this, I watched a couple games of him just because I want to see if the hype is real. Because of how you always hear of these guys coming out. Like I think Lafreniere was one that was a couple years ago.
Yep.
Like he wasn't that great. Usually you hear about these generational prospects, and you're like, this guy is not generational. Yes, no. Like Connor McDavid was a generational prospect. Sidney Crosby was a generational prospect. This kid looks the part of a generational prospect. So if someone wants to say, "Oh yeah, I want to get Connor Bedard," like okay, I'll take it because I think he's probably one of the best players I've seen at that level since Connor McDavid. Like I watched Connor McDavid with the Erie Otters, which is in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a game once, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Like those things that he was doing with the puck and just the way he skated, and it was like, holy mother God. And I didn't think he'd be as great as he is right now because I think he's one of the best players to ever play the game right now. But holy crap, I was like, that guy's great. This Connor Bedard kid, he's not as big as Connor McDavid, but he is so skilled and he is so fast, and the way he plays the game is just the way you want a hockey player. And he's got that it factor, you know? And I could see why people want to lose out, but it still doesn't guarantee you a spot to get the kid. That's because everyone's tanking for this kid. If you're not making the playoffs, you're like, all right, let's lose these freaking games so we can get Connor Bedard. That's exactly what every team is thinking right now.
Which they really shouldn't be. And I'll tell you why. And this is the flawed logic that people have. Okay. They seem to think that if they get this prospect or that prospect or this player or that player, that somehow that's going to magically catapult you up into the playoffs the following year. And that, you know, you are now going to be crowned Stanley Cup champions inside of maybe 2-3 seasons. If you just get that first round draft pick. Well, I'll tell you this. Let me give you some idea on the reality of things, because I'd like to ask some of these people on the site, where are you coming up with this concept? Okay, where do you think that one thing will equal the other? Because one does not necessarily follow the other. Let me give you some information, Joe. Let me give everybody a little bit of data here. Okay. In the last 10 years, since 2012, I went back and looked, and of all the number one draft picks, like of all the teams that picked first out of the draft, okay, only one became a Stanley Cup champion, and that was Colorado, and it took them 10 years to do it. So don't tell me that a draft pick
that was Nathan McKinnon, right?
In 2013, yeah, equates to their Stanley Cup championship in 2022.
No.
It doesn't. One doesn't beget the other. You look at some of the teams that have had number one draft picks in the last 10 years. You know, you got New Jersey Devils. They got it twice.
Yeah.
You could say that they've actually been performing, but haven't won a Stanley Cup.
They haven't even made the playoffs. Well, this year they're going to make the playoffs, but yeah, they haven't done nothing. I mean,
Edmonton, Buffalo.
Another team is like, okay, you mentioned Edmonton. Connor McDavid is one of the best players to play the game. And for the first time since he's been there, they got to the Western Conference Finals, and they think that's pretty good. I mean, they didn't even go to the Stanley Cup Finals. They went to the round before it. I mean, that just tells you everything they know. Buffalo, Jack Eichel was the number one pick, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
Okay, Jack Eichel, he's not even on the Buffalo Sabres anymore, and they're better than when he was there. Like, Jack Eichel is in Vegas right now, and he's not like a superstar like people think. But like Connor Bedard, he's a great player. I think he's gonna be fantastic. But you are kind of playing into my line a little bit, saying like, okay, just because you get the number one draft pick doesn't mean it's instant success. And I think what it kind of boils down to is the general manager. I think that's exactly what it boils down to.
Bingo. Now there's where we can agree, Joe. I don't mean to interrupt you, but man, did you nail it? And I'm gonna let you expound on it, and then I'll tell you why. Go ahead.
Well, here's the thing. You could have a general manager that drafts a guy like Connor McDavid, right? No shit. Like, I could have drafted him and been good. Like, I would have been like, hell yeah, I drafted this guy. Like, cool. It's one thing to draft a superstar that you know is a superstar, right? Like, when the Cincinnati Bengals, they drafted Joe Burrow, right? They knew he was going to be a star. They knew he was going to be a star because he was the number one overall pick. The issue is filling your roster with other guys to help that guy win. Like, it's great to have Connor McDavid with Edmonton, but guess what they have won? Absolutely nothing. They've won nothing. Like, for years, they were missing the playoffs year after year after year after year. Ken Holland comes, they start to make some strides, and they're still in this little, like, where they're good, but they're not good. And this might be the best Edmonton team that Connor McDavid's played on. And that was years ago, and he's one of the best players in hockey. So it's not like an instant success. I mean, look at the Boston Bruins. There's not one number one pick there. There's not. It's Pastrnak was a late first-round pick, if I imagine. I forget when Bergeron was there, but I think McAvoy was like a 14th, 18th overall pick, somewhere along there. But like, they didn't draft for a number one overall pick. You know, it helps to get a guy like Connor Bedard or Sidney Crosby or Connor McDavid, or even that year that Connor McDavid, that drafted with Connor McDavid, they got Austin Matthews in Toronto. And yeah, that helps a lot. But Toronto wouldn't be Toronto if they didn't have Marner and they didn't have Tavares and they didn't have Nylander. Like, you got to have talent around the team. So just just losing out for a draft pick isn't going to help you. I mean, we hope that maybe if you get Bedard, especially with this Red Wings team, that you could be better, but it doesn't always generate that success. Like if you go back in the number one overall picks, and you can probably look at them and just see the players behind them that got drafted just like 10 or 15 picks, and you go, okay, they missed there, they missed there, they
Yep.
missed there. Oh, they missed there. Oh, nope, that was Connor McDavid. Never mind. They missed there. And you're like, a lot of teams miss on number one overall picks.
Well, you nailed it when you said management, and that's exactly what where I was going with this. That is who is the architect and the engineer of championship organizations in anything. But you see it in professional sports all the time. Who is your management team? Who is your management core? Those are the people that are making all of the decisions, not just player decisions, coaching decisions. I mean, they're deciding who the coaches are. They decide who the support staff are. They decide what all types of things. And it all comes from your management group. They are the ones that are driving the success of an organization. They can catapult it forward by giving them all the resources that they need, all the encouragement that they need, having the expertise to make the right moves at the right time. Or you can have a management team. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't manage it properly and you screw it up, it won't matter. It won't matter. It's kind of like people hate to think of it this way, or they don't think of it this way. They think the players are at the top of the food chain, so to speak, and that they get catered to and all this other stuff. But the reality is, and Darren McCarty said this himself, he's like, we're the hired help. Players know they're kind of at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to the pecking order inside those professional sports organizations. So it's your management team that is making the decisions. The guys on the ice just execute it. At least that's their job. Their job is to execute what the plan that they've been given. So you got to have guys and you got to have assets that are capable of doing that. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for assets that are capable of implementing the plan you're putting together, and that have good chemistry, and that we can build momentum and all that other kind of stuff. If you look at the Stanley Cup champions for the last 10 years, because I looked at who got the number one draft picks and I compared it to the Stanley Cup champs for the last 10 years. And here's what you'll find. You'll find interesting patterns with Stanley Cup champions in particular. A lot of back-to-backs, or maybe that might be off a year, but even in the last 10 years, you had Tampa Bay back-to-back. You had the Pittsburgh Penguins back to back. You had basically the LA Kings and Chicago Blackhawks trading off between 2012 and 2015. And so, trading off the Stanley Cup. So the reality is, I mean, those are almost back to backs. But what can you say was constant, right? You had changes in players probably here and there, but what probably didn't change? Their core management group did not change from year to year. They kept that same group together, and they just took the same formula for success and they reinstigated it or reinstituted it the following season, and they got the same result. So long as your assets continue to be capable of implementing your plan, and you've got a management team that's now found a plan to success, and none of your other competition has figured their story out yet, you're going to have the same result. And that's really what it takes. So when you look at the management team that the Detroit Red Wings have, they've got Stevie Yzerman at the top. Then, of course, you've got Chris Draper. You've got Nick Lidstrom. We've talked about some of the other people that are in this organization. These guys just need to have the opportunity to win. And you talked about this also online recently, Joe, and that was Stevie had to unravel the mess that he was left with. He's still at the end of that process now. In order for the true Yzer plan to take place, he needed to get rid of these 4 guys he got rid of. And now it's truly going to be Stevie's team moving forward. Give him 3 to 5 years. We're going to have a Stanley Cup champion in Detroit. I'm telling you, probably 5, but it wouldn't surprise me if he fast tracks it to 3.
So I'm looking at these lists, right? In 2020, Alexis Lafreniere was the #1 overall pick in the NHL draft. That was the same year that the Red Wings got Lucas Raymond, and that was the same year that a couple picks later, Tim Stutzel went to Ottawa. And we know Tim Stutzel, he's a really good player. And we know Lucas Raymond is a really good player. But if you look at the way the 3 and 4 pick did compared to the 1 and 2 pick in that draft, the 1 and 2 pick are the worser players. I mean, Lafreniere is not a great. He's not a bad player, but he's not as good as Raymond or Stutzel. And then you look at like somebody. So these are first round picks since 20. We'll go 20. We'll go 2010. Taylor Hall in 2010, Edmonton. Edmonton again with Ryan Nugent Hopkins. Edmonton again. This is #1 overall picks too. Edmonton again in 2012. Nail Yakupov. He was a bust. 2013, like you said, Colorado, Nathan MacKinnon. Florida had Aaron Ekblad. That was the same year I think Larkin was drafted. 2015 was Connor McDavid. Obviously, we know that's great. I made a mistake. Austin Matthews wasn't in the same draft as Connor McDavid. Austin Matthews is in 2016. I think Jack Eichel was in the draft in 2015. That's who I was thinking of. Nico Hischier was 2017. Dahlin was 2018. Hughes 2019. Lafreniere 2020. 21 was Power, and last year was Slavkovsky, and he was hurt this year, so you really don't know. But like you said, it's a crapshoot. But this Connor Bedard kid, he's kind of a big thing. Like, he really is. But where I agree with you is, like, it doesn't matter Bucas if you don't have the general manager who can put the talent around that guy. Because what happened in Edmonton was, for years they got the #1 overall pick, and like they kept floundering, and then they finally got the #1 overall pick again with Connor McDavid, and they still sucked because they had a bad general manager who was signing these awful contracts that was making the team worse. Like, I think he signed this goalie named Koskinen. I remember this. This was I used to follow Sportsnet religiously on YouTube, and they signed this goalie Koskinen to like a 3-year contract. This was Chiarelli, who was before Holland. He signed with a 3-year contract, and the first day that Holland came in there, guess what he did? He bought out that guy. He's like, screw this. Like, I'm not. This guy's getting paid $4 million for what? But that's exactly what it is. Like, you have to have good general managers, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you think that you're gonna generational player. If you can't put the pieces around him, you will never win. Look how long it's taken the Colorado Avalanche since 2013 to get to another spot. And it took another lottery pick in Cale Makar to put that team over the top. So that just tells you how hard it is. And you're hoping that maybe Steve Yzerman strikes gold with a guy like Lombardi, right? A guy who's scoring 40 goals in the OHL. Maybe he strikes gold with the Cross Hannes or the kid that he signed from the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. I doubt it, but maybe it's a guy like Buchenikov. You never know. That's the kind of smooth moves that Stevie Y made in Tampa, where it used to be just Hedman and Stamkos, right? But now you look at Tampa Bay and it's Stamkos, it's Hedman, it's Sergachev, who Yzerman traded for with the Jonathan Drouin trade. It's Braden Point, who he drafted in the 5th round. It's Nikita Kucherov, who he drafted in the 2nd round. It's Vasilevsky, who was a 1st-round pick that was a late 1st-round pick because the Red Wings traded Kyle Quincy. That's why they got Andre Vasilevsky in Tampa Bay. That's a full circle event right there. Those are Vasilevsky, Point, and Kucherov. Those are the 3 biggest players on that Tampa team, and he found them later. That just tells you how good of a general manager that Stevie Y is. And all this crap I keep hearing about Stevie Y, maybe he's a middle of the road general manager. I heard this from some guy. You know who it is. Anyways,
yeah.
Middle of the road general manager. I was like, are you kidding me? Look at his track record. Look at his draft record. You can't get better than that. You can't get better than that.
Well, the other thing that makes Steve such a shrewd general manager is that not only can he see the diamonds in the rough, which is key, okay? He tends to key in on people who will fit the culture that he's looking to build. And culture is so important. In fact, it's almost, at the top of the list. It's certainly in the top three, and I would say probably number one. Really is culture, attitude, perspective, all that stuff. But the other thing Stevie Y can do, and he does it probably better than anybody else. And they often refer to it as picking his people's pockets. Steve is able to take advantage of his opponent's failures or their lack of vision. When they make a mistake, Steve takes full advantage of it. He's ready and he is prepared, and he has the guts, the balls, if you will, to do it. I mean, he really does. And so that's the other thing with Steve is there's a lot more general managers that make mistakes than don't, and he takes advantage of them when it suits him.
Yeah,
there's not a lot of other guys that do that.
Here's the thing. He got the best of Armstrong in St. Louis with the Ville Husso trade. Husso is great. Obviously Nick Leddy he traded and he got Jake Wallman and Sundqvist. Sundqvist turned into a third-round pick this year. So, I mean, at least he gets value for what he trades to other teams. And he got value with the Bertuzzi trade and the Hronek trade. And obviously, when you look at the draft and you look at the way he's drafted in his career with the Tampa Bay Lightning and with Detroit so far, like, there's kids in that pipeline. I got to tell you something. I think this Carter Mazur kid could be that Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point. And not to mention, this kid is a hometown kid. He's a hometown kid. Kid's great. I love the kid. I think the way he plays at Denver University, I'll tell you what. I said when he got drafted, I said he reminds me of a Darren Helm. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna take that back now. He reminds me of like a Kucherov, a Pastrnak. Like the guy is just he is a total hawk on the puck. Like I love watching a kid. I watched him a couple times at Denver, and obviously he's playing against smaller competition, but the way he's playing against these guys, he's playing with a total killer instinct. And the one thing I always love about players who you draft, the killer instinct. One of the things I can say about Larkin is maybe he doesn't have that killer instinct. I'm hoping he can develop it. But like Seider, he has a killer instinct. Like he wants to kill you when he's on the ice. Like he's a nice kid. He looks like a goofball sometimes, and he likes to laugh like a total kid. Him and Lucas Raymond. But like,
they are total kids, Joe. Come on now.
but when Seider gets on the ice, dude, he is a total he is a guy that like you don't want to play against. The guy is a total freakazoid the way he plays.
But this is what you get with these guys that have played in some of these men's league as very young kids. I say young kids, I mean like late teens, early 20s. I mean, both those guys played in the Swedish Hockey League, I believe. I know for a fact that Mo did. Plus, he played in Germany. I mean, most played in some very tough leagues over there because when they come from Europe, those guys playing in Europe or Russia or whatever, it is a very serious business over there, and those guys are playing with a certain amount of brutality that you just don't see coming out of the NCAA over here. You know what I'm saying? I mean, these kids are the kids coming out of it, and I love my American boys. I do. I love them dearly, and I'll always be behind them 100%. But the reality of it is, you coming out of the NCAA, you're playing soft. Okay, you're not playing up against brute men who got to feed their families by playing hockey. Do you know what I mean? It's a different.
Here's where I disagree because first of all, if you play for one of these programs like okay, I don't like Michigan hockey, but I respect the hell out of them because they have some really great players that come out of there, and they got some great players playing for them right now. Frank Nazar, Adam Fantilli, who's going to be a second overall pick in this year's draft. But like you watch them and they play with a mean streak too. Like those kids are ready to play. Like Owen Power came into the NHL and he's ready to play. A guy like Kent Johnson or Marty Beniers, who's in Seattle, who's going to win the Calder, he came ready to play. It's where you get these kids like Denver. Those kids are ready to play from the hop. They're ready to play from the hop. Minnesota kids are ready for a play for the hop. There's a kid named Matthew Knies, right? Plays for Minnesota. He's a skilled forward. He's a total badass. Toronto has this kid. And they're saying when they're in the playoffs, they're going to bring this kid into the playoff roster. That's how much the college game has progressed. And obviously you can't take a kid from like, some college out of nowhere and say, oh, we're going to put you on a playoff roster. It's a certain school. Like, it's a certain like program that you got to go to. Like the Denver kids, the Michigan kids, the Minnesota kids, like those kids are absolutely, They're animals. They're total
The
animals.
Minnesota kids are rabid. Can I tell you?
The Minnesota kids, they're probably gonna. I would love to see. I hope this is the Frozen Four. I hope it's Minnesota, Michigan, and I hope it's Denver because that would be that would be three of the best teams to go to the Final Four in quite a long time because those teams have tons of NHL talent. I mean, the Red Wings have two players on Denver right now, and it would be fun to watch because those kids are ready to play. Like Nyes, he's ready to play. Obviously, Missouri comes up. He's not going to come up next year. Maybe I don't know. But Stevie said he wasn't counting on it. But he's called him an excellent prospect. That's what he called him. That's exactly what it is. Like this is it's a process, and that's what you got to go about. And your players that are, in the college ranks, they're pretty good, and we'll see where it goes.
Well, I'll tell you, here's why. Back to why I feel that losing out is not the right tact to take. Okay. That's the wrong attitude. That's the wrong culture. If you're trying to build a culture of champions, you don't do that by saying, hey guys, we're going to lose out this year. Oh, but by the way, in 3 or 4 months, when we start the next season, we want you to come back winners. It's not the way it works. You've got to cultivate that over time. You've got to plant those seeds. You've got to water them. You've got to get those guys thinking the right way so that when they come in, the culture is there. It's already, you can't just keep switching it on and off, on and off, on and off. Either you're a winner or you're not. You're a winner on the ice as well as off the ice. It doesn't change. Just because the season ends or you get summer vacation doesn't mean it changes who you are, how you think, or how you approach the game. So this concept of losing out would be catastrophic to have everybody take that. It's bad enough right now, and Derek Lalonde said it. It's bad enough they're sitting around feeling sorry for themselves right now, and you're seeing the pathetic effort that's out there because of it. They're downtrodden right now, and you're not getting any kind of desirable result with that. So screw that whole losing out thing. Go with what Stevie Y is building. I still trust the Yzer plan. I'll tell you what, I see Steve in these press conferences and I think to myself, damn, that is one sexy brain. I mean, not only is he yummy, but I know his daughters have to just roll their eyes when they think, oh my god, my dad is
like
yummy.
my eyes have rolled in the back of my head. So
he's so handsome still. He is just, and his
you have a crush, like that's okay,
big time. But I'm telling you, no. But what I mean is the way he thinks is exactly the way we need to go. And he's got the guts to go out and do what he knows is the right thing to do, even though he's going to catch hell for it. And I love that about Steve. That's part of that killer instinct. He's still got it. That competitive edge, he's still got it. And he is going to help lead this team, and he's going to tutor Dylan Larkin on how to be that kind of a leader. We just got to wait for Dylan Larkin to get there, get over this blip here, and get back to being more of a Stevie Y kind of a leader.
Yeah, here's the thing. I'm not really worried about the progress of this rebuild. I think it's gonna head on the right track. I think next year's the year where they take the big step up. And I always hear from people like I'm making excuses for this team or something along that lines. You know me better than that. I don't make excuses for the team. I'm simply saying if they were in the Western Conference, they would be closer to a playoff race than they are in the Eastern Conference because the Eastern Conference is a freaking juggernaut. Like it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse. The Rangers are excellent. They're great. The Hurricanes are great. And then you got the Devils in the Metro. In the Atlantic, it's the Tampa Bay Lightning, it's the Boston Bruins, it's the Tampa Bay Toronto Maple Leafs. And then you got a bunch of teams ahead. It's a hard conference to get in. And if you're young like the Red Wings and you're not as polished as some of those other teams, they're gonna kick your ass. So if they were in the Western Conference, they'd be like 5 spots out of a playoff spot right now. They'd be 8 points out of a first place in the West. Like that's crazy to think about.
Well, the reality is that mathematically they are not out of the playoffs yet.
No.
They could still pull it off. They absolutely could still get a wild card spot. But I think where they're at in so many ways, mentally, psychologically, just even with the whole structural reorganization craziness of losing those 4 guys who've been playing with all year, I don't think they're prepared to make a run, but it is mathematically possible if they did. So all I'm saying is, boys, Don't embarrass me on Wednesday against Chicago, please. I expect you to put up a valiant effort against Boston, but I don't expect to win there. But please save me and do not embarrass me. Do not lose to Chicago.
This has been a great podcast, Cindy. Obviously, we had a lot to talk about, so we'll get to it on the next podcast because we've done 3 in 5 days. Pretty crazy, but we're doing this all for the people, and we love it.
That's right.
All right, Cindy, this has been a great podcast. Join us on the next podcast of the Red Alert Podcast. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Facebook, Detroit Red Wings News, powered by IQ. We're on Instagram and Twitter too, but Twitter we're not really that active because it's basically
a cesspool.
It's a cesspool. We just get our news from there. But we will see you in the next episode of Red Alert, Detroit Red Wings Podcast, on the next episode.
See you then.